The call came in at 2:17 a.m. Not unusual. Late-night calls rarely are. The operator glanced at the screen, already tired, already bracing for panic. A car accident. A medical emergency. A wrong number whispered by someone half asleep. But the address made her stop breathing. It was a house that didn't exist. She knew that because the system flagged it instantly. Red text. Archived location. Destroyed by fire. 37 years ago. Before she could question it, the line connected, and someone was screaming. Not hysterical, not dramatic, just raw, exhausted terror. The kind that comes from someone who has been afraid for a very long time. Please, the voice said. Please send someone. I can hear it moving upstairs. The operator froze. Protocol told her to verify the address. Her mouth moved, but her mind lagged behind. Sir, can you repeat your location? The voice hesitated, breathing too close to the receiver. I already told you, it whispered. You always make me say it again. That was the first thing that felt wrong. The second was the background noise. No fire alarms, no crackling flames, just the sound of a house settling, wood creaking, pipes ticking, like the building itself was listening. The operator typed again. Same result. Burned down. No survivors listed. Case closed decades ago. Sir, she said carefully, that address, that house isn't there anymore. Silence. Then the voice began to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, broken sound. The kind that slips out when hope finally gives up. That's not possible, the voice said. I'm standing in the hallway right now. Something cold moved through the operator's chest. She checked the call log. Her hands started to shake, because this wasn't the first call, or the second, or the third. Emergency services had been receiving calls from this house for years. Different voices, same address, same fear. And every single one ended the same way. Disconnected, never rescued, never explained. And the most disturbing detail hadn't even registered yet. The timestamp. Because according to the system, this call wasn't coming from the present. It was coming from before the fire ever started. The house used to sit at the end of a quiet street, the kind people forget while they're still living on it. Maplewood Lane, tree-lined, narrow, too calm at night. After the fire, the city cleared the remains quickly, too quickly. By morning, all that was left was a blackened foundation and a smell that never fully went away. Ash clung to the soil. The grass refused to grow right in the center, no matter how many times the lot was reseeded. People avoided it without ever agreeing to do so. Children crossed the street when they walked past. Dogs pulled at their leashes, whining low in their throats. Neighbors kept their curtains drawn, especially at night, especially when the air felt heavy for no reason anyone could explain. Officially, the fire was simple. An electrical fault, old wiring, tragic but ordinary. A family of 4. No survivors. That was the story everyone learned to repeat. But the records didn't agree with each other. Some reports listed 3 victims. Others listed 5. One document, buried deep in the archives, listed none at all. Just a blank space where the names should have been, as if the system itself refused to remember them. Even the timeline was wrong. Some files said the fire started at 3:40 a.m. Others claimed it began just after midnight. A few insisted the first emergency call came before anyone smelled smoke. Those files were usually marked corrupted. When operators talked about the house, always in low voices, always when supervisors weren't nearby, they mentioned the same strange detail. The callers never described flames. They talked about footsteps in empty rooms, doors opening by themselves, a pressure in the air, like the house was holding its breath. One woman had whispered that the walls were listening. Another caller had begged the operator to stay on the line because the house didn't like silence. No one could explain why those calls were still in the system, or why, every few years, the address would light up again, active, alive, demanding attention. Fire crews had been sent in the early days. They arrived to an empty lot. No heat, no smoke, no structure, just a patch of ground that felt wrong to stand on, as if it remembered something violent. After a while, the department stopped responding. Not officially, just quietly. The calls were labeled glitches, echoes, system errors. But late at night, when the lines were quiet and the lights hummed overhead, operators still feared one thing, seeing that address appear again, because the house might have burned down decades ago, but whatever lived inside it never left. The calls never sounded the same twice. That was what unsettled the operators most. Different ages, different accents, different levels of fear. One night it was a boy, no older than 10, whispering into the phone like he was hiding in a closet. "I'm not supposed to be awake," he said, but the hallway light turned on by itself. Another time it was an older woman, her voice sharp with denial, insisting nothing was wrong even as her breathing trembled. "There's no fire," she kept saying. "I would smell it if there was." A man once called laughing nervously, trying to explain away the sound of furniture moving upstairs when no one else was home. "They said this house was empty when we bought it," he said. "That means something, right?" Every call carried the same undercurrent, confusion layered over dread. None of them understood what they were afraid of yet. And always, there was something in the background, a rhythmic sound, not footsteps exactly, not breathing, more like weight shifting from room to room, as if the house itself was pacing. Operators were trained to remain calm, to ground callers, to control panic with steady voices and scripted reassurance. But it became harder with this address, because some callers reacted to things the operator hadn't said. One operator asked a woman to check the back door. The woman screamed, "How do you know about the back door?" she cried. "It told you, didn't it?" Another operator muted her microphone for a moment, just long enough to steady her hands. When she unmuted, the caller whispered, "Don't do that. It gets closer when you stop talking." That operator quit the next day. Then came the call that forced a deeper review. A man phoned in, his voice strangely calm, almost resigned. "I don't think we're supposed to leave," he said. The operator asked why. "Because the windows won't open anymore," the man replied. "And the rooms are smaller than they were yesterday." The call ended abruptly. When supervisors pulled the records, they noticed something that had been overlooked for years. The voices weren't random. They aged. A child's voice from one call reappeared years later, older, deeper, heavier with exhaustion. A woman who once spoke with disbelief later called again, her voice cracked and hollow, as if she'd been crying for days. It was the same people, calling again, calling closer to something, and the system log showed something impossible. Each repeat call was marked earlier than the last, as if the house wasn't moving forward in time, but sinking backward. The department called it a glitch. That was the word they used when the call log stopped behaving like time meant anything at all. Calls from the burned house began arriving out of order. A dispatcher would answer one at 1:43 a.m., log it, move on, only to see the same call appear again minutes later, timestamped 3 hours earlier. Sometimes the system placed them decades back. Sometimes it dated them years into the future. One night, an operator noticed a call marked, received, 1979. She hadn't been born yet. The voice on the line sounded tired, not afraid in the way the others were, afraid in the way someone is when fear has become routine. "I think it's almost time," the voice said. "Time for what?" the operator asked. "For it to notice we're trying to leave." The operator swallowed and checked the address again. Same lot, same burned house, same dead space on the map. She asked the question no one was supposed to ask anymore. "What day is it where you are?" The line went quiet. Then the man laughed softly. "You still don't know?" he said. "That's why you can hear us." Another operator experienced something worse. She answered a call and immediately felt a headache bloom behind her eyes. The voice on the line sounded familiar, not someone she knew, someone she had been. The caller spoke in the same clipped rhythm, paused in the same places, even breathed the same way when thinking. "I don't have much time," the voice said. "It's starting to get warm." The operator slammed the disconnect button, her heart racing. When she checked the recording later, the voice was distorted, warped beyond recognition. But the operator knew what she'd heard, and she stopped answering calls after midnight. The system itself began to behave differently. Recordings replayed themselves without being accessed. Lines clicked open on their own. Operators swore they heard breathing through inactive headsets. Maintenance found nothing wrong. They never did. Then came the realization that changed everything. A supervisor laid the call logs out in order, not by date received, but by sequence. And suddenly, a pattern emerged. The calls weren't random moments. They were steps, each one closer to the same point in time, all of them moving toward the same night, the night the house burned. And buried inside the data was something else, a call that hadn't happened yet, logged, waiting, marked with a timestamp only hours away. The fire department finally understood the mistake they'd been making. They thought the calls were echoes, aftershocks, recordings replaying themselves through a broken system. They were wrong. The calls weren't coming after the fire. They were coming from before it. Each voice wasn't trapped in the ruins. They were trapped in the countdown. Operators began listening more closely to what the callers were actually saying. Not what they were afraid of, but what they hadn't noticed yet. The temperature complaints came first. "It's warm in here," one woman said. "Is the heat stuck on?" Another caller laughed nervously. "It smells like something's burning, but I think that's just the old carpet." Then the lights. They flickered, always described the same way. A slow dimming, like the house was growing tired. One man mentioned the walls creaking louder than usual, as if the structure was under strain. No one mentioned smoke. No one mentioned flames, because those came last. The department ran simulations, reviewed archived audio, slowed down recordings, and hidden beneath the voices, they found something new. A low, steady sound. At first they thought it was static, but when they isolated it, the truth made several people physically ill. It was a match being struck, not once, over and over again, buried deep beneath hours of calls. Someone inside the house was trying to light something. Again, and again, and again, fire crews were dispatched despite the protests. They arrived at the lot just as they always had. Empty, cold, silent. But one firefighter swore the air felt heavier than usual. Another said he could smell smoke. Faint, impossible. And then the calls surged. Lines lit up simultaneously. Children crying, adults shouting, someone pounding on a door that wouldn't open. Operators shouted over each other, trying to respond to all of them at once. One voice cut through the chaos. "Calm, certain. You can hear us because you're part of this now," it said. "Every call you answer brings the fire closer." That was when the department realized something worse. They weren't witnesses. They were fuel. And the house wasn't asking for help. It was making sure someone remembered it long enough to burn again. The calls changed after that. They became clearer, less distorted, more detailed, as if the house had finally decided to show itself. Operators started receiving fragments, pieces of the same night, told from different mouths. A woman described standing in the kitchen, watching the clock above the stove tick too loudly. A man whispered from a bedroom that felt smaller than it had that morning. A child cried because the hallway seemed longer every time he ran down it. Every voice described the same thing without knowing it. The house was closing in, walls pressed inward just enough to notice. Doors stuck where they never had before. Windows refused to open, even when forced. The air grew thick, hard to breathe, heavy with the scent of dust and something sharp beneath it. Not smoke, not yet. Operators listened as the callers argued among themselves. Some wanted to leave. Some insisted they were overreacting. One voice, calm, steady, kept telling them to stay inside. "It's safer here," it said. That voice never sounded frightened. It sounded patient. One operator noticed something that made her hands go numb. That voice never identified itself. It never asked for help. It never reacted to anything happening in the house. It just guided the others, slowly, carefully, like it had done this before. Calls overlapped now. The system struggled to keep up as multiple lines carried the same night forward, second by second. And beneath it all, the sound returned. The match. This time, it was louder, close enough to hear the scrape, the flare, the brief, trembling breath that followed. A woman screamed that the curtains were warm. A man shouted that the back door wouldn't budge. The calm voice spoke again. "It's almost time," it said. "You'll understand soon." One operator broke protocol. She stayed on the line longer than she was supposed to. She listened as panic collapsed into something worse. Acceptance. The last thing the child said before the line cut was quiet and confused. "Why won't the house let us go?" The call disconnected, but the system kept recording, and the timestamp finally stopped moving backward. It settled, locked onto a single moment, the exact minute the fire would begin. Once the timestamp stopped moving, nothing could undo it. The system treated that moment like a destination. Every new call snapped back to the same minute, 3:38 a.m. No matter when the phone rang, no matter who answered, the house had chosen its ending. Supervisors ordered the lines shut down. Power cycled. Servers disconnected. The calls came through anyway. Phones rang without connections. Headsets crackled without signals. One operator swore her personal phone vibrated. No number, no call history, just the sound of breathing when she answered. And then came the call that changed the rules. It didn't come from the burned address. It came from inside the department. The screen displayed an internal extension. Empty office. Unused line. The operator answered with a shaking voice. "Emergency services." Silence. Then a whisper. "You shouldn't be listening this close." The voice was wrong. Too near. Too clear. As if it wasn't traveling through wires at all. The operator felt heat brush her face. Not enough to burn. Enough to warn. I can smell it now. A different voice said suddenly, overlapping the first. The walls are hot. Lines flooded again. All at once. Panic layered over panic. Voices shouting over each other, collapsing into noise. And beneath it all, guiding them, the calm voice returned. It only hurts if you fight it, it said. That was when the operator realized the truth. The house didn't trap people in time. It taught them how to stay. The fire wasn't an accident. It was a door. A way to seal the moment forever. The calm voice wasn't a victim. It was the house learning how to speak. The operator tried to disconnect. The button didn't respond. The voice addressed her directly. You've been here before, it said. You just don't remember yet. Her screen flickered. The address changed. It was no longer Maplewood Lane. It was the fire department, and the timestamp still counting down. The countdown reached 0 without any sound. No alarm, no announcement, just a sudden stillness, like the world pausing to listen. The operator stared at the screen as the calls stopped coming in. For the first time in hours, the room felt empty. Too empty. She pulled the headset away from her ear, her skin prickling with heat that wasn't there a moment ago. Around her, the department looked unchanged. Desks, monitors, blinking lights. But something felt sealed. Like doors had been shut she hadn't seen close. Then her phone rang. Not the console. Her personal phone. No caller ID. No timestamp. She didn't want to answer. She already knew who it was. Her finger hovered, shaking, before she accepted the call. Emergency services, she said, automatically. The voice on the line exhaled in relief. Oh, thank God, it said. I didn't know if anyone could hear me yet. The operator's mouth went dry. The voice sounded exactly like hers. Same tone, same cadence, same fear, barely held together. I'm at work, the voice continued. Something's wrong with the building. The lights keep flickering, and it smells like burning plastic. The operator stood slowly. Around her, the air felt thicker, warmer. She noticed details she hadn't before. The hum of the lights sounded strained. The walls creaked softly, settling. A faint clicking echoed through the room. Rhythmic, deliberate. A match. I think we should leave, the voice said. But the doors won't open. The operator backed away from her desk. That's not possible, she whispered. The voice laughed weakly. That's what you said too. Her screen flickered one last time. A new address appeared. Not Maplewood Lane. The fire department's own address. And beneath it, a note the system had never displayed before. First recorded call, pending. The heat rose suddenly, sharp and real. Smoke curled somewhere out of sight. The voice on the phone grew calmer. It's okay, it said. You'll help the next one. You always do. The line went dead. The operator looked down at the phone in her hand. It was ringing again. She answered, and somewhere, in a house that had already burned, a voice finally heard someone pick up.